If you're thinking about making a move here to Temecula, California, you're definitely going to want to watch this video. It's all about the 5 worst things about living here in the city of Temecula. Let's go ahead and get into it. Hey guys, hey again, my name is Justin Short. I am a realtor and team leader for the Short Real Estate team here in Temecula, California and Murrieta, California. And like I mentioned, this video is all about the 5 worst parts about living here in the city of Temecula. So if you don't know my story, so I have lived here locally in the Temecula area for over 20 years. I went to high school out here. I'm now, raising my family. We have 2 young kids. Like I said, we've been here a long time. And I think I can give you a really good perspective on what it's like to actually live here. I personally, I think this is a great area to live. This is exactly where we plan to raise our family. We plan to be here long term, right? But no area is going to be perfect for everybody. So I thought it'd be really helpful if we made a video talking about the worst parts about living here. So we have a lot of people that relocate here from other areas, sometimes from other parts of California, and a lot of times from out of state, right? And I think you can look online. You can, everyone's going to tell you how great an area is and how perfect their city is, right? But that's just not the case, right? No area is perfect. There's going to be pros and cons to everything. So I thought it'd be helpful if I gave you the 5 biggest cons from my perspective on what it's like to actually live here in Temecula. But the first thing, if you like videos like this and you want to see more of them, do me a favor, please hit like, please hit subscribe. Obviously it helps me, it helps the channel. We're obviously continuing to grow it. And then we put out videos each and every week. So we have a ton of videos that we've posted in the past talking about best neighborhoods, worst neighborhoods, market updates on what's going on in the real estate market, all things, real estate related here locally. So if you want more of that information, you can look through a bunch of our video history. And then if you guys have any real estate questions, of course, I'd love to hear from you. So I have people that reach out all the time. You can feel free, you can call, you can text, you can email. Myself and my team, we'd love to help you, love to answer any questions you may have. And of course, help you out with your home search. So would love to hear from more of you guys for sure. But let's go ahead and we'll get into the content here. So the 5 worst things about living here in the city of Temecula. Number 1, by far, the worst part about living here, it's just the heat. It's the temperature. It's a hot area to live in. So we are in Southern California, right? If you look at us on a map, we're about an hour north of downtown San Diego. So we're north of San Diego. We're kind of southeast from LA. We're east and a little bit south from Orange County, right? And a lot of people live here because it's more affordable, right? That's like the big draw, right? So you can buy a really nice house for under $1 million, really mostly between $500,000 and $800,000. You can get a beautiful home out here and live in a nice area, a nice clean suburb-ish area, right? And so it's a really great alternative to those other areas that are more expensive. But the con is that it's hot, right? So especially if you compare it to an area like San Diego, which is known to have like the most perfect weather in the country. It's like 70 degrees every day, right? Out here in Temecula, it's gonna be hot, right? So we definitely have more of like a desert type climate. It's hot. They say the average temperature in the peak summer months is right about 91 degrees for the month. So that's going to be the months of August and September. I can tell you from living here, when we have heat waves, it definitely gets quite a bit higher. So we can get a heat wave up to 100, 103, 104 pretty regularly. So there's probably a couple weeks each year where you're going to feel that type of temperature. For me, as someone that's lived here for a long time, 90 is super comfortable. So you definitely become warm-blooded. Like 90 is like a really nice day, and it, you want to go outside, and it like feels good to stand outside, and it's not like totally miserable, right? But someone that lives here, once you get up over 100, it really sucks. So it's hot. Out here, of course, everybody's house is going to have central air, so you can go inside. You're gonna have air conditioning. You're gonna have air conditioning in your car, right? But that's really the worst part about living here is those 2 months a year. It's going to be super hot during the day. What makes it not so bad is at night we do get a really nice breeze. So once by about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, we get a nice breeze that comes actually from the coast. So it comes from like the Orange County area, kind of comes over the hills and really cools off the area. So what makes our area different than other hot climates, like maybe out in the deserts in California like Palm Springs or out like in Vegas or Arizona where it gets super hot, it never really cools down. It could still be 100 degrees at night, where as opposed to out here in the Temecula area, once you get that breeze that comes on through, it'll cool down really comfortably. It'll be 70, 75 degrees by about 6:37 at night. And so it's really nice. Right? You can go out to a nice restaurant, you can sit outside on the porch, on the patio. It feels super nice, it's super comfortable. You can shut off the AC, open some windows. I think it makes it a lot more bearable. And of course, it's more of a dry heat. We don't get much humidity very often, at least. So, but without a doubt, I mean, that hot temperature is going to be the worst part about living here. But the other 10 months of the year, the climate is actually super nice. So once you get to like October, I think the average temperature drops to like the mid 80s. So it's going to be super nice. We don't get a ton of rain throughout the winter. Very, very rare. I think there's a couple weeks of rain. Maybe 10 to 14 days of rain per year on average is, I think, what the stats show. So just not a ton of water, right? And then as we get to spring, same thing. It's real mellow, 70s to 80s, and it's super nice. So the weather overall is really nice. The 2 months really suck. It's super hot, at least during the day, and then at night it cools down. So to me, it's not so bad, but it's definitely the worst part about being here. All right, so the second worst part about living here in Temecula is really just the job situation. So there are not a ton of local jobs here in the city of Temecula. So because of that, most people that live here locally commute out. So most people that live in Temecula, they commute to San Diego, they commute to LA, and they commute to Orange County. Either that or now they work from home. So especially like in this post-COVID era, right? So many more people now work remotely. If you can work from home, that really takes away one of the biggest pain points about living here, because most people do make the commute. And when you make a commute, you're dealing with California traffic. You're on the 15 freeway, sometimes the 91 freeway, and on average commute I think is like 45 minutes to an hour each way. So that's hour and a half, 2 hours worth of drive time each day. You do that 5 days a week. I mean, it's gonna eat away at you. So for a lot of people, that is their least favorite part about living here, right? So if you work remotely, obviously it's going to take that away. You don't have to worry about the commute, or a lot of times people now can work remotely most of the time, and they'll only have to go in the office once a week, twice a week, once a month, that type of thing. So if that's the case, I think it's a lot more palatable to deal with. But because of the lack of big business here locally, most people do make that commute. So when I mention that, I do want to clarify, like, there are a ton of businesses here locally. So there's a lot of shopping, there's a lot of restaurants, there's a lot of entertainment, there's all types of stuff. Like, it's not a small area by any means. I mean, there's over 500 people that live here close by, between Temecula and like the surrounding cities, Murrieta, Menifee, Wildomar, Winchester, kind of the little hub that is here. So there's a ton that's going on, but as far as like high income earning career businesses, there's not a ton that are out there. So most of the people that work locally work in medical, so the hospitals, they work for the police station or the sheriff's department or the fire department or paramedics or something like that, somewhere in that range, but not a ton. Like, I don't know of any. I think there's actually one like Fortune 1000 company that's here locally. So just not a ton of staffing here locally. Most people, again, work for one of those other sectors that I had mentioned, or they work remotely, or they're going to make the commute. So something to think about for sure. All right, so the third worst thing about living here in Temecula kind of ties into that last point. So if you live here and you have to make a commute, the next thing that's really going to suck for you is the traffic. So when we are in Southern California, I think most people, even if you've never been here, you kind of have an idea in your head that there's a lot of traffic in Southern California, and that is absolutely true. The traffic is pretty intense. It's actually not quite as bad going to San Diego, but once you go to LA, Orange County, the traffic it's brutal. There's a ton of cars. It's tough to navigate, and it can really take so much longer to get to the same place, as opposed to if you're at like a non-peak time. So the traffic's going to be really tough. Because of that, the average person that lives here it's about a 45-minute to a 1 hour commute. So if you call it an hour, that's going to be an hour drive time each way. That's 2 hours on the road. And then if there's an accident or something, it's going to be that much longer. But if you're going to do that hour commute each way, it's 2 hours a day, that's 5 days a week, that's 10 hours a week. You're going to be stuck in the car. I mean, that's something you got to wrap your head around, right? There are people that do that all the time, yes. Like I can see the freeway from my office and it's actually kind of jammed up right now. But the reason for that is because we're so much more affordable here than other parts of Southern California. So you can still be in a relatively affordable area. You can live in a nice newer suburb. Your kids can go to a really great school district. So that's a big plus here, right? And so people kind of weigh those pros and cons as opposed to like some of the bigger cities. The affordability is just out of control, right? Even for $1 million, you're going to get a little shack and probably not such a great area more often than not. So you gotta weigh the pros and cons. But if you are going to make the commute, you got to think about the traffic and make sure you're going to be okay with that. All right. So the fourth worst part about living here in the city of Temecula is just the fact that we are about an hour away from all the major cities in Southern California and a lot of the major things that Southern California has to offer. So by that, I mean, where we're at in Temecula, if you're going to make a trip down to downtown San Diego, it's about an hour trip in the car. If you're going to make a trip out to the beach, it's about an hour trip out to the beach. If you're going to make a trip to the zoo in San Diego, it's about an hour. If you're going to go to Orange County, to most parts of Orange County, it's going to be about an hour commute. If you're going to go to Disneyland, it's about an hour. If you're going to go out to Palm Springs in the desert, it's about an hour. If you're going to LA, it's actually a little bit farther, closer, probably an hour and a half, depending where you're going. But although one of the benefits of being in Southern California is all the cool stuff that's around. There's a lot of big cities, there's a lot of big counties, and a lot of things to do for sure. But if you're at a point in your life where you're planning to be making those trips and going to those different places multiple times a week, being an hour away from all that can really kind of eat into your quality of life. So for me personally, and where we're at, we have young kids, right? So I'm busy with my business. Obviously, we sell real estate. We have kids. They do activities and sports and all that type of stuff. When we eat, local restaurants, all that type of stuff. I would say we have a pretty full life. So with that, we don't make those trips to the big cities all that often. I would say every 2 or 3 weeks or so, we would head out, right? So having an hour drive for a day trip with a family, it's not such a big deal for me. Like, it doesn't really affect me negatively. But a lot of people, if you're used to living in more of a city environment where, hey, it's a 5-minute Uber ride down to the local sports team to go see the Padres play a baseball game, or to the local the zoo or whatever it is you're doing, it's going to be a different quality of life, right? So those are just things you got to think about, where there is a lot to do here in Southern California, and it's all accessible from living here in Temecula, but you got to factor in about that hour commute time to go out and do that. So just something to keep in mind. All right, and the fifth worst thing about living here in Temecula is really our average sales price. So our average sales price, like most of the country, has really jumped up quite a bit, over the last decade, especially over the last 5 years now. So it's September 2023, that I'm recording this, and the average sales price for home in Temecula now is about $850,000. So with that, if we compare to the rest of the country, we have a significantly higher than average sales price. So compared to other parts of Southern California, we would be considered affordable, right? So I guess it depends where you're coming from and what you're used to, right? But for $850,000 in San Diego, LA, Orange County, you're not going to get much of a house. You're going to get something that's probably built in like the 60s, or maybe a condo, an older house that's dated and needs quite a bit of work, and probably, honestly, it's probably a little bit run down and close to dilapidated, really, at that price point. Probably not going to be a super nice place. Where out here, for $850,000, you can get a nice big 3,000 square foot home, 4 to 5 bedrooms, newer neighborhood, probably built sometime in the last 10 to 20 years, maybe remodeled. It's probably going to be a pretty nice place, a place that most people would enjoy living, and has some cool features, maybe a pool, that type of thing, right? But if you are moving from other parts of the country, the price point can be a big shock, right? If you are currently living in somewhere in the Midwest, right? If you're living in Nebraska and the average home there is $300,000 to be in a nice home, making the jump to Southern California to buy an $850,000 home, that's a huge jump, right? I mean, that's a huge price swing. You're gonna have to wrap your head around that, make sure it's gonna feel affordable for you, and make sure it's gonna make sense. So that can be really tough when people want to make a move here from other parts of the country, is the jump can just be so significant, where it's a real benefit from people when they come from other parts of Southern California, or if they come from like Northern California, the Bay Area, or other parts of the West Coast, right, that are just more expensive. We're relatively affordable for them because that's what they're used to. But someone coming from other parts of the country, Midwest, or a lower priced area, it can be a little bit tougher pill to swallow. All right, so those are the 5 worst things about living here in the city of Temecula. Hopefully it's a good perspective from you guys. Like I mentioned, I've lived here locally for a long time. I think it's a great place to live, but there's gonna be pros and cons to everything, and hopefully it gives you guys a good perspective on maybe what some of the cons would be to living here in the area. If you guys have any questions, you can feel free to reach out. Like I mentioned, do me a favor, hit like, please hit subscribe. You can reach out anytime. Love to hear from you guys, and hopefully talk to you soon. Thanks.